views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try when...
Hello, this is Patty Hunter of Patty's Page. My show today is Dr. Geoffrey C. Cly. We have a lot of questions for him, you know. He's a good old chap and he's honest. And we're going to be talking with him for at least half an hour or so. So here we go.
Perfect. Well, hello and thank you. And I love being called a chap. I don't think I've been called a chap before. That was really nice.
That's the British in me, girl. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
But the Irish more like it.
that's great.
Where were you born and raised?
I was actually born in the Portsmouth, Virginia Naval Base.
Oh,
My dad was in the Navy at that time. And so my mom graphically told me stories about the labor and delivery. And it's kind of humorous now that I'm an OBGYN looking back and hearing the story. My parents passed away about 20 years ago, but she actually wrote down the whole birth story for us, which was really cool and maybe prophetic, because if we hadn't had that written down, like several pages for each of my brother and sister also, we wouldn't know. And I was born in a room with 2 laboring patients. And much of the time when my mom was pushing, she said the nurse was not even in the room at all. And
oh no.
yeah, and my dad was out in the waiting room. That was back in the day, before you were allowed to have fathers in the room. So I was born there. And then sometime shortly thereafter, we moved to Ohio. So I have a few early years, pre-elementary in Zanesville in Columbus, Ohio. And then we ended up residing in where I grew up most of my childhood and most of my, or actually all my teenage years was in West Virginia.
West Virginia. Where are you residing now then?
Yeah, I'm in Indiana. So I grew up in West Virginia, and I went to University of Dayton in Dayton, Ohio, where my grandfather had gone and a couple of my cousins. And that's where I found this world of obstetrics. I actually wanted to be a lawyer. I know that's one of your questions down below, but in Dayton, I switched, and it's an interesting story, but I'll save it. I switched to medicine, and then I stayed there in Dayton, Ohio until finishing my training. I did a few years in Dayton, and then what I didn't know at the time was God had a plan for me to be in Indiana. And although I didn't realize it was God's plan, looking back, I definitely realized it was God's plan for me to come to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And so that's where I live, and I practiced for 17 years. And now God has another plan for me, and I'm just 60 miles west practicing in Rochester, Indiana, and I love it. And I'm thankful for God that He's guiding my life despite all the kicking and screaming and obstacles I put in His way. His plan still comes true.
Is this like Jonah in the whale?
Yes, you got it.
So, what schools did you go to as you were growing up then?
Yeah, I came out of Catholic schools primarily, in elementary school, and high school was actually, I was in a seminary in high school. It was a high school Catholic preparatory seminary. I thought I wanted to be a priest, and I spent 2 years at the seminary, a freshman and sophomore year. And then I just felt the call that God, I didn't feel like priesthood was it. I felt like I was supposed to be married and be a dad. And so I then went back to Charleston, West Virginia, and finished in a Catholic high school called Charleston Catholic. And then from there, Dayton, Ohio for college.
I was Roman Catholic when I was growing up. I know what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good to be religious. I believe in that. I believe Catholic is where God wants me to be, but I think we're all cousins and Christians in God's family.
Betcha. Now, I bet your family's all pro-life as well, your siblings and family.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. A big pro-life family, especially my aunts and uncles. My mom was one of seven. And so they, I would say they're more Catholic, more religious, more spiritual than me. They're amazing people. So I grew up kind of in the pro-life family, and I really I never even thought about the other side much because that's just, I grew up Catholic and Christian, and you had babies, and
Hmm.
what it was.
So, what did you go to university or?
University of Dayton for undergrad, and then I went to Wright State University School of Medicine, which is in Dayton, Ohio.
Right.
And that was 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of med school, and then 4 years of OBGYN training in Dayton at the Wright State OBGYN program. I actually was going to be a lawyer. I have several lawyers in my family.
Hmm.
So I was at the University of Dayton taking pre-law classes. I was pre-law as an 18-year-old kid. And we have to take, in college, as you probably know, we have to take other classes of biology and chemistry and psychology and religion.
Hmm.
And so I took this biology class, and we saw a video you might be familiar with. It's an older video called the Miracle of Life video.
I have that.
Oh my gosh, I have not seen that since 1988, 1989. And when I saw that video in our biology class, instantly I was like, I saw the baby being born, and I was like, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And something hit me and said in my heart, that's what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life. So I didn't know other than I knew I needed to be a doctor, and I knew I was going to deliver babies the rest of my life. And I left that class. I called my mom and said, hey mom, guess what? I'm going to deliver babies. And here I am pre-law. This is like 8 a.m. During the week. And she goes, what? I go, yep, I'm going to deliver babies. I just saw this thing, this baby being born. It was amazing. It was the most incredible thing. And so from that moment forward, I really changed everything to get to med school in order to deliver babies. And the rest of it is really pretty neat for me. I was always being a seminarian. I was kind of the friend, the nice guy growing up. So I always had a lot of female friends. I was the friend zone, they call it. So I'm a mama's boy, and so I'm able to have relationships with women in a mama's boy kind of comfortable way. And that's what, as an OBGYN, we have to have long relationships with women, and they have to trust us back and forth. And so it just worked perfectly.
It's good to have friendship for trust,
Oh my gosh, yes.
So while you're growing up, who influenced you the most then? Your mom, dad, someone else?
Yeah, it's interesting growing up. So my mom is definitely my positive influence with the religion and hard work. And she worked so hard her whole life for us 3 kids. I'm the oldest of 3, but now that I'm 40 plus 10, I like to claim my brother and sister are older than me.
Let me see. It's 40 plus 10.
I can't say the word. Can't even spell it. So I'm changing the dictionary and the vocabulary.
I'm 18 years older than you, son.
That's awesome. 40 plus 28.
You betcha.
And so mom was the influence. And interesting enough, my dad was an alcoholic. In my book, I call him a happy, lazy drunk. And that's not a negative term. My brother and I were talking about this the other day, and I was explaining to him, I said, Dad wasn't an abusive alcoholic. He was happy. He was lazy, meaning he would lose jobs because of the alcohol. And at night he would fall asleep. And so when I grew up, although he was never mean or anything.
Which is good.
Yeah, I didn't have many experiences with him as a child. So I actually grew up wanting to be the best dad I could be, and the best husband I could be, in order to kind of do better for my kids. And so that was good in some ways, but having a proving type of mentality, as I've learned as I've grown up, is not always good, because we need to have loving relationships and be positive. We don't always just want to prove we're different than someone else.
That's true. Now, you are went to training, specialized training. Exactly what are they that you had gone through?
In America, it's 4 years of an undergraduate degree,
Mm-hmm.
and then 4 years of a medical school degree.
Right. You
And
said
then after med school, there is 3, 4, 5, or 6 years, depending on your specialty. And for OBGYN, it's additional 4 years of specific OBGYN training. So 12 years after college to
wow.
become, yeah. Looking back, I'm like, that's a long time. I
No,
was in
but
the
it's
middle
worth
of it.
it.
It was worth it. And I love helping people. And that's what I feel like God's given me an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives.
Who invented a technique called the Da Vinci robotic surgery?
So if this is also an interesting story. I don't think I've told it that many times, if at all, on the air, maybe a little bit, but I did mention in my book. And so when I was training in 1998, I believe, I went down to Cincinnati and we learned some surgical skills at the Johnson and Johnson company. And when we were done, as we were leaving, they walked us by this futuristic robotic looking instrument, big thing with a cockpit where you put your eyes in,
Oh,
you
yeah.
put your hands in there. It was the Da Vinci system, and it has these robotic arms. And they're like, hey, if you guys want to check out this brand new world prototype, it's one of 2 in the world. It's for heart surgeons so that
Hmm.
they can do heart surgery without making a big incision. They could do heart surgery with little incisions. And it was developed by DARPA, which is the government secret agency.
Oh,
And they developed it to do battlefield surgery, so they could take wounded soldiers on the battlefield, and robotically the surgeon could be back at the Air Force base and they could robotically over the internet do surgery on these surgeons. Well,
that's blood taken.
yeah. Well, found out they couldn't do it that well because it's very difficult to have this on the field in war. And then the heart surgeons didn't like the machine. And so even at this day, now 15 years, well, now actually 15 years since I first trained on it, but 22 years later, the heart surgeons still don't like it. So long story short, or longer story shorter, in 2005, this thing showed up at the hospital I was at in Fort Wayne, and it was in the closet collecting dust. And so I found out it was in the closet, and I remember training or practicing on it in 1998. And I said to the hospital, hey, if the heart surgeons no longer want to use it, and I'd be happy to do some surgeries with it. And so that's where my whole Da Vinci world started, using the machine. And now there's a ton of them everywhere, all over the world, actually.
What do you use it on?
So it allows me to do large female surgeries with teeny weeny incisions. So hysterectomies, women can go home the same day with little pain and drive the next day. Bladder surgeries, pelvic pain, ovarian cyst surgeries.
Oh.
You can do cancer surgeries on it. Prolapse repairs, pain, endometriosis for younger women with pain. So I can go in and fix the problem through teeny weeny incisions, and they're home the same day with very little pain, and they're back to normal in less than a week.
So you usually operate during the week?
Yep. Usually 1 or 2 days a week. Right now it's Wednesdays, and I might add some Fridays, and then I have on average 3 office days a week to see people. And I see between 20 and 30 people a day. Depends on the type of visit.
Wow.
I like to spend time with them. So that's actually not a high number, but for me, it's important to sit down and see how they're doing and ask about their family and how's life going in general? Because I might be the only person in their life they can talk to in a confidential way about intimate things that they can't really talk to their friends or family about without getting biased feedback or someone judging them. So it's important to take care of the whole woman. And that usually results in me taking care of many generations of the family members, which I'm honored to be able to do that, where I have a great grandmother, a grandmother, a mother, and even the child. And now even the babies I delivered 16, 17 years ago are coming to see me.
Wow. Wow. Wow, you're not. Oh, you're aging yourself, kid.
I know. I've taken care of patients through the years who've had abortions, and what I've found in my experience is no one ever wakes up, no woman wakes up and says, someday I want to have an abortion. Someday I want to have a big wedding. Someday I want to have a white horse and an abortion. So
Yeah,
what happens is life gets messy, and then they wake up and they're pregnant and they're scared.
yeah.
And almost every person that I can remember, if not every woman who went through with an abortion, was scared. It was fear and nervousness. It was those negative things that lead them to the path. And almost every time, many of them come back to me, and almost every time they say, "I wish I hadn't done that." And so then they're left with the grief and the loss and the sadness from that abortion. And frequently I find they get pregnant within a year. After an abortion, a majority of my patients, and I would be interested to see a study on this, get pregnant within a year. And I think that's a subconscious way of the soul and the mind trying to heal itself. And
Substitute,
what's that?
substitute.
Yeah, yeah. And to try to make up for the loss that they agreed to do by putting something loving with a new child, but the pain is still there.
You
And so,
counsel them?
absolutely. So it's exactly how I counsel them. I say, look, I, I don't want you to get an abortion. I know it would be better not to. And I said, if you don't feel like you can keep the child, because sometimes there's some dangerous situations these women are in, I
Mm.
said, consider giving it up for adoption. But I can promise you that it'll be harder if you do the abortion psychologically than if you either kept the baby and gave it for adoption, or kept the baby and split from got away from the negativity in your life. And many times they see that, because I'm not judging them. I'm not trying to tell them, get out of my office. I'm not going to give you the phone number. I'm trying to just relate to them. And many times they say, you know what, it makes sense. And they keep the baby, or they continue the pregnancy. And they usually find that that is a better solution.
Because I've talked to over the years people who have had abortions with 40 years in their history
Mm-hmm.
before, and you see all the symptoms. There's no closure.
Right. Right. You're exactly right.
And I don't know how to reach out to these people psychologically. I
Right.
don't.
Usually what I try and do is you probably know some of the people, the women who now are coming out and helping women through the post-abortion syndrome. I try and get them in touch with them. I don't know if you have something in your area like that.
There's still Hope Center.
Okay. Yeah. And
That's
God bless you for that.
a Hope Center is wonderful.
Yes, they sure are.
I understand that several years ago you became involved with an abortionist that was operating here in Fort Wayne. Who was this? Who was this guy's name? I'm trying to remember.
The person was Dr. George Klopfer, and he was the abortionist in Fort Wayne, South Bend, and one other city in Indiana. And
Gary?
what's that?
Is it Gary, Indiana?
I think so. I think you're right. And he was a person who, man, I think his whole life, this is my opinion, was was incorrect on his assumptions and incorrect on what he thought he was doing. And so the way I got tangled up with him was as a young, just a little background, as a younger kid, as a mama's boy, as the goody two shoes kid going to the seminary, and as the oldest responsible adult or kid and then adult in my family. So I was kind of picked on in elementary school. I was picked on in high school. I was bullied, and so that left a lot of hurt and scars on my heart. But as a result of that, I don't like it when I see other people taken advantage of or other people bullied. And so I guess I try to help other people when I see that happening. And so now I take you up to back in 2004, 2005 now. as I went to Fort Wayne to start practicing, I was finding these women would come into the emergency room who had an abortion by some unknown doctor.
Right.
And that was Dr. Klopfer. And when I trained in Ohio, abortions were done at the abortion facility somewhere south of town. And we as OBGYNs, we didn't do abortions, and we didn't see the complications. We didn't see the women. We didn't have to deal with it. So it was kind of just, we didn't know about it. It was kind of over there. We didn't know who did them, so to speak. But when I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, all of a sudden I'm taking care of this guy's complications, and he was leaving pieces of babies inside of women, and they were showing up in the emergency room infected. They were showing up bleeding. One woman lost her uterus. I had to do a hysterectomy.
No one died, eh?
What's that?
No woman died?
Not a woman died with one of my partners several years prior. And so what I was because I was on call for the hospital, and they would show up in the emergency room, and I'd be responsible to see them. And I'd say, well, who did your abortion? And they said, well, it was a guy down the street on Inwood Drive. And I talked to first I was like, I called the ER doc, and I said, hey, call that abortion doctor. I'm not taking care of this complication. It's not, it's not my patient. And that's when I was told, well, you have to take care of it because he lives in Illinois. He comes in 1 day a week, does abortions, and leaves.
Every Thursday.
Every Thursday. So there's no one here to help these women. And that's when I said, no, absolutely not. That to me was taking advantage of women, bullying women, and then doing a bad job and harming women. And that's when I said, no, enough is enough. It's not going to fly with me. And so that's when I reached out to Kathy Humbarger, and that's where it's in the movie. This is what led up to the movie, all the actions in Inwood Drive. And so what I did, I said, this can't fly. We need to stop this. If he's going to do abortions in town, then he needs to take care of his own problems. And I didn't like the fact that abortions were being done. And I knew I couldn't stop the abortion, but I knew that I could stop him from hurting women. And that's how that whole process started.
How long did you help with him?
Yeah, a lot of people think I worked with him, and
wrong words. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, I like to be honest about it. A lot of people think that I was I was helping him do abortions, or I did them at weekends and night. Absolutely not. So it took us 2 or 3 years to develop legislation and laws to try to stop this guy. And he was slippery and he was slick. And he and Planned Parenthood knew how to get around him. So finally we had a bill, a resolution to pass, which was, we were trying to say that if an abortionist comes into town, or anybody for doing any surgery comes into town, they can't just leave and not have someone in town to provide emergency services should there be a complication. And so we finally passed that, and Planned Parenthood, I think, stood up and argued against us. And what I was told was, they said, well, Dr. Cly, this is what Kathy, I believe, told me. And again, this is in the movie, more factual. It said, I'm just paraphrasing, but she said, Dr. Cly, if no one offers to put their name as the emergency room backup complication physician, then we won't be able to pass this law, and we won't be able to do anything at all to stop him, to help women, to prevent him from harming women. We are dead in the water, and all 3 years of just a wasted time. I said, you know what? Put me down. I will be that doctor. If he has a complication show up in the emergency room, I'll take care of that woman and I'll help her. I don't support the abortion, but I'm not going to let her die or be injured or be harmed any further than what he's already done. Because women were coming into all of the emergency rooms in town, and one of 30 doctors were taking care of them, and we're not able to communicate because of the privacy laws. So if my competitor across town is the guy who takes care of the abortion complication this weekend, and next weekend it's me, because we're not in the same group, I'm not allowed to talk to him. So what we found out when we started putting our heads together, there were complications happening all the time with this guy. So when I said, okay, put my name down, I'm not doing abortions, but if there's a complication, I'll help that woman. I provided that. I was in that role for 3 years. They passed the legislation. Planned Parenthood was very upset because they couldn't use that against us.
Mm-hmm.
But for those 3 years, then he at least straightened up, and he
did?
only had one patient come in with an infection. So women at least weren't getting infections or bleeding or pieces left inside now. But what we found out, because of the reporting requirements now, and now there's a watchdog system, we found out he did abortions on girls who were sexually molested. That's where his story just shocked me and blew me away. So because we now found that out, because I put my neck on the line and said, I'll be the one person for complications, we were able to track these cases. And when I found out that he had done abortions on kids who were sexually molested and didn't report it properly, he tried to report it in the way in the background so that he wouldn't get caught. Mm-hmm. That's when we were able to shut him down from the law that we started 3 years ago. And that's when we pulled the plug on him and said, this guy is dangerous. He should have his license pulled. And so that whole thing is what stopped him and the abortions in most of Indiana. But when I had to meet with him one time to sign this paper in the beginning of those 3 years.
Yeah.
And I went into his office, and he wanted to meet me there. So I agreed to go into the lion's den. I went in the office, and he told me, he goes, Dr. Cly, he goes, I am helping women. I am preventing them from suffering. And I was like, I don't think so. That doesn't, no, I don't see that at all. And I disagreed with him, but he believed in his gut, mind, that by removing the unwanted baby, he was saving them from suffering. And it was the most twisted thought process. It didn't make any sense at all, but that's what he told himself for so many years when he did all his abortions.
So finally, this is my last question. We have Planned Parenthood back again.
Yes.
Here. What can we do about this?
Well, I think we have to think differently about how we go at it.
Chemical.
What's that?
You're doing chemical.
Right. Chemical. And so I guess what I've said this, and I might get in trouble a little bit with my Catholic friends, but there's a lot of people who in the Catholic world who put signs in the yard and says, pray and fast to stop abortion. We need the praying. Right. We need the fasting. Right. But we need more people to go outside of their door, go outside of their church, and take an active part to teach women and help women and help these moms who are scared and suffering. That's the only way we're going to stop it, is we shine the light on the truth of the fear. We get rid of the fear, and these young moms or moms who feel like they have no other option, we need to be there for them so that before they ever make a decision for abortion, they know that there's love around them in their community and people who want to help them. So yeah, exactly. So they won't make that decision. That's what we got to do. And that's a different way of thinking than going outside and protesting, because the protesting, it has a point, but it just sets up a fight. It just, both sides just fight together.
Yeah. This is Patty Hunter of Patty's Page. Thank you, Dr. Cly, for being on my show. And we'll see you.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you so much.
And we'll see you next week. Thank you. God bless.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my